Okay, so welcome to another interview for Smart Travel News. As you can see, I'm speaking in English. This is not a chatbot GPT thing. This is not an avatar. This is my real voice, and we're doing this interview in real English this time, which is going to be quite a task. And we're repeating somehow the last interview that we did about profitability, productivity, and revenue management. Which works so well, and we wanted to do this also for international audience. And again, we are so lucky to have Cristina Blaj, which is a founder and CEO at Open Revenue Consulting, and also works for d2o. And again, Patrick Apostolo from Radisson Hotel Group. Thank you both for attending. Chris, how are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to both of you. No, it's great. It's great. I'm super pleased that we get to have this conversation with a wider, in front of a wider audience, a more international audience. I think Spanish is wonderful, and today is really just trying to drive that visibility worldwide. So thank you so much both for your incredible input.
Thank you, Chris. Patrick, how are you?
Good, good. I wish I could sit here on this beach behind me, but I spent, I would say, a restful period of holidays, and I wish everyone connected as well an amazing 2024, prosperous, and especially with health, because I think that's the most important. The rest we can cope with. So, and thank you, Juanda and Cristina, for this opportunity. You understood how bad my Spanish was, so I think you wanted to give also possibility to express in good English some of the basic concepts I was trying to share. So thank you very much, and happy New Year.
Thank you, but no, we actually we have two tasks for this interview. Which one would be language, of course, by my lousy English, and the second one is that my dogs are around here, so they will appear sometime. And if you listen to some barking during the interview, everything is okay. Nobody's getting hurt or anything. It's just they want to have the spotlight as well. So last time we talked about a quite new concept in the context of how much expenses and costs are increasing for hotels, and at the same time inflation and the cost of life actually is getting higher for our customers, for travelers. So in this context of raising costs, it is quite difficult for hotels increase profitability, which is basically what we're here for. So last time we started with you, Chris. We can do it again, and in trying to get some context on how hotels are struggling and coping and fighting this situation, and trying to keep up, because occupation and rates are actually very good. We have a very good recovery this year, but we're talking about profitability and productivity. So how can we cope with the situation?
Yeah, it's brilliant. I think we've been recovering very swiftly after COVID, pretty much across the board. It's been a very strong effort for many companies. There will be a brilliant conversation we'll have today with Patrick, who can actually tell us more about the foundation work that they have done off the back of that moment, of really understanding where we sit with our baseline cost with a property that's actually closed. And then from there, really figuring out how we can streamline and control and really maintain those costs as low as possible. We were actually in London earlier in November. We set up a really focused event. We called it the Asset Growth Summit, where we wanted to understand what opportunities are really there in light of all these incremental costs that we're experiencing every single day. And we had one of our key partners, Hotspots, which is an operational benchmarking company, who really brought real data in front of hoteliers to tell us, they aggregate, I believe, more than 10,000 hotels worldwide, and wanted to provide us a really clear picture of what's going on across the various types of costs that we have when we zoom into the in-room costs effectively. And there was a big revelation there. I guess we all can recognize that across the board in our business. They were looking at data from 2019 reported to 2023, and then highlighted one of the biggest costs that industry is experiencing at the moment, which is labor cost, particularly as it relates to housekeeping. And that was 65% increase 2019 to 2023. We all know that the labor is actually usually in our P&L sits at higher than 50%. So it's one of our biggest costs across the board. But seeing that increase is very concerning. Attached to that, of course, we have other costs that are related to whether it's cleaning, whether it's amenities, whether it's commissions, credit card costs, and of course the distribution costs that have been there and constantly increasing, as well as the energy costs. So we're faced with a very huge surge in these costs. So the idea is, what can we do with the revenue, with the total revenue that we're driving today, to make it a lot more profitable and to flow through a lot more of that margin to the bottom line, as opposed to, you know, not having visibility over all these costs and just sort of like live in a world where we're really, really keen to continue driving top line, but not having or missing that oversight. It really makes it a lot more difficult for hotels to be able to cope with it. So it's a very difficult exercise. And I think in the face of all that, we will see with Patrick in a few minutes. He will talk to us about the things that they have done at Radisson to improve that. But I think across the board, you know, hotels have generally very, very high level goals. The most difficult part for them is to identify how they can really distribute them in a way that they can turn them into actionable planning and help them retain that profit margin as best as they can. And for this, you know, we work with d2o as our strategic partner, and we implement together with them these projects where we connect revenue with productivity and resource planning and financial planning, to really be able to identify how can I run my operation in a way that I can adapt my resources every single day based on the level of activity and occupancy that I have in my hotel. Because ultimately, whatever occupancy I have in my rooms will very much dictate the impact on occupancy on other departments. So it's a bit like a clockwork of interlocking gears and springs. And when, you know, rooms has a massive impact on what's going on in the other departments. So the idea is to really determine what are my needs, what are my requirements across the board, that I can understand them. I can open up the flow of information across every single one of those departments, and I can then allocate the right resources in each and every single department constantly for every single day of the year. And this is the biggest challenge that hotels have today, because this means connecting data. And I think we have brilliant intelligence on the revenue management side. We go into lots of granularity when we segment and we look at our cost of acquisition, but we have such little insight into all the profit centers and cost centers, and how we do revenue and how we forecast revenue ultimately impacts the cost, and how we can control the cost in every single one of other departments. So the key here is working on increasing GOP, but working on two different GOPs. The first GOP, I would say, is the GM's operating performance. The more we're able to enable them to have that visibility and be able to see what's going on in real time in every single department, the more they have the capacity to increase the second GOP, which is the gross operating profit. So I think that's really what we're trying to tackle today. And, you know, being able to identify the ultimate resources and connect them into the productivity, we have seen, you know, it can drive 3 to 4 times more powerful that GOP than any other action that we would do across the board. And not just the GOP, but allocating the right resources is also an answer to our guests' expectation and satisfaction. So, you know, it really requires us to always allocate the right resources, also to retain that level of satisfaction that we want for our customers. And of course, that will impact the ability for us to drive revenue as well. And I think, without trying to make this too long of an intervention, but I think what we need to think once we are able to connect the data, we need to expand our analysis and financial planning, where we're actually able to include additional KPIs. When we look a lot at occupancy and ADR and TrevPAR, and even trying to go into GOPAR. But what we don't really have a clear visibility is this cause and effect situation for us to understand how productivity and its trajectory is actually happening in real time. And that's where we connect revenue with operations by introducing what we call, operational forecasts. So apart from my rooms forecast, I actually end up doing an operational forecast in every single department daily that is unbiased, that is realistic, and is consistent for the upcoming number of days, room nights, covers, guests, and so on. And for this, we really need technology to empower us to do this. And one of the KPIs that will be facilitated by connecting revenue with productivity and resource planning is, I would say, fairly new to the EMEA region or worldwide, but has been living and breathing in Scandinavia for over 20 years, which is revenue per hour or revenue per operating labor unit. And this is really the opportunity to understand how the total revenue that we drive across the board, which is effectively a sum of all the revenue we have divided by the number of hours that we end up paying, the labor hour pays, gives us a very good correlation. It goes hand in hand with our GOP. And this is where we start talking about aligning revenue with productivity solely through controlling the costs that we have. Sorry for that long intervention there, but thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, Chris. And actually, that's a nice intro for you, Patrick, for you to take it from there. I was thinking that there was a common conversation when we were after COVID that many hotels have taken that chance, that extra time, if you will, to really adjust technology and procedures. So how was it in your case, and specifically for this this very curious part of increasing productivity?
So to begin with, and thank you for the question, and Cristina, I think it's elaborated but right on the spot, and KPIs are for sure the driver. No, if in our vision in Radisson is that if you cannot prove it with a number, it doesn't exist, pretty much. What I like very much and you stressed is the fact of the prediction. We believe that once you have closed the month, you have closed the month. You can learn what have been the opportunity that you lost. But when you're looking and steering the future, that makes a totally different impact on the business. And so connecting Juanda to what you were mentioning before, we started our journey in 2019, for example, with PMI, actually end of 2018. And already in the first year prior to COVID, we got to almost 500,000 saving in our lease portfolio. So we as Radisson work with three main buckets of contracts: leased, which we have about 72 in operations. We have the managed, which are over 700, and then we have the franchise portfolio. So here I'm really focusing on the lease because the lease represents as well the biggest part of our EBITDA result consolidated at the company level. And that's how important this portfolio is for us beside the high producers. With COVID, it was an amazing opportunity for us, to be honest, in the worst situation. Why? Because we had never had the possibility, unless it was a new opening, to understand what is the baseline. So ironically, by closing 200 hotels in EMEA during COVID, it brought us to the situation to say, okay, all my cost lines, now I can understand. And surprising enough, one time talking with Young, the CEO of d2o, we were looking at HLP, so heating, lighting, and power. And that was the only cost line that was not going lower than 50% reduction. Then we started to question ourselves, and we started to actually understand that there is always that fixed component in HLP that no matter what, it will never be a variable cost. It will always be a fixed cost in that sense. That's what PMI is bringing in, connecting again the accuracy of the top line revenue forecasting. But I insist, what makes unique and universal is activity. So while from a monetary point of view, and we saw it this year, for example, with most of the fluctuation of the currencies coming from the Nordics, that had a huge impact for us because we have the Norwegian crown and the Swedish crown going down compared to the euro, which of course makes a big difference considering our footprint there. An activity is equal everywhere. A room night, it can be from Thailand to Russia to South America. A cover can be the same from Italy, Spain, or so on. An hour for work is an hour everywhere. So I don't need to anymore try to look and find as an operation guy that work as an activity on looking on connecting the dots on the revenue. I need to really understand that the revenue and the rev polu, as we were mentioning last time, so the revenue per occupied labor unit that has been now coming also already from the Toyota way of working, is a reference because it's the component. But together with the rev polu, we personally started to look in Radisson also to hour versus cover, hour versus room night. And that was, for example, one of the things that we learned during COVID-1 as well, because we were focusing a lot on rev polu. When revenue is steady and there is growth, great to look at rev polu because it's the representation of your business. It's telling you exactly how much you're earning per hour. The moment we started to close hotels and then reopen them again, we were in most cases in basic service. So being in basic service, I might not need an F&B team, or I was serving limited food and beverage because of protocols and so on that we had in different countries. That meant that rev polu was not representative anymore of the situation, of the context of COVID. So we actually went to room nights per hour, and that is common ground for everyone, not influenced by any monetary value, but influenced from pure productivity. And when we talk about benchmarking, that is, it's stunning how many GMs just open their eyes, and as Cristina was saying, the GM operating profit is not only the gross operating profit in that sense, because that is the biggest change management activity that many times we have to do with GMs, is convincing them of the prediction. Because we all know that the accuracy of prediction, we need to live with a plus minus 5%, it can go even to 10%, but still, it gives us such a power, not only to look at what we have on the books, but what could materialize. And this became even more important after COVID. Why? Because in COVID, we see now that the booking window, if before it was 3 weeks, now it's 3 days. My business, if before it was 1 year, now it's 45 days. So having a tool that is so agile and flexible to predict what's coming is just a change management activity that is important for the hotel to achieve.
Thank you, Patrick. So Chris, when we talk about benchmarking, usually we're thinking about benchmarking our hotels against other hotels in the competition on the local area, etc. So we're not that used to like an internal benchmarking, which is the big difference here. So Patrick mentioned that many GMs open their eyes when they see this data and these predictions. And so how's the usual reaction when they see this kind of data, and how can you show them how to connect productivity to revenue management? Because usually we talk about distribution or upselling, we talk about revenue, but we're not talking about the productivity of our teams. So when we introduce that new element, how do they react?
Yeah, and I think it's it's having a benchmark can become extremely compelling. And I remember with lots of the projects that we do, and we're sitting with organizations and they say, well, I would start with one hotel to see how it goes, and then we take it from there. And when we explain to them about the benchmarking and the index that gets created and this opportunity to compete between properties and between departments and between GMs, they understand that, wow, it actually drives my performance, having an opportunity to benchmark. So benchmarking converts or turns into something extremely compelling for hotels because, number one, it's able to look across your entire portfolio to see, based on the same parameters, like Patrick was saying, those KPIs are the same across the board. I want to be able to group my hotels into specific clusters that become comparable, and I'm able to spot very quickly where the drivers, who are the performance drivers, who's lagging behind. And once I identify a property that is lagging behind, I'm able to drill down into it to see what is causing that property to lag behind, which department is responsible for that lagging. And what are the specific factors that impact that department to lag? And here we're talking about a methodology that we call it adaptive resource management. And what it means is that off the back of everything that you evaluate, you have sort of like a cycle. So you start with the planning stage. Planning is extremely important for you to be able to understand, what do I need to plan? What are the resources that I need to plan for every single day in every single department to be able to achieve my targets? And then really, well, the next sort of phase will be about being able to do what I have planned. So executing that plan is extremely important. Then I monitor to see what is the impact of the execution of that plan. And if something goes, more or less according to the plan, then you evaluate and learn from whatever hasn't happened or was meant to happen. Once you are comparing historical data with and identify where were you not able to plan resources effectively that sort of like kept you behind your targets, then what you do, you adjust and you take the action. And this is the approach that allows us to understand the leading indicators, not just the lagging indicators, what we have historically been doing, or the deviation from the objectives that we have to targets that we have to reach, but rather, what is the delta? How can I change the course of action now? And that's why this index of adoption, what we call it, the PMI adoption index, becomes extremely valuable because it allows you to benchmark constantly against the best practice. So there's a bank of best practices that is available for hotels, and that becomes curated to the type of hotel that they can always report to the best practice, meaning, am I doing it all right compared to the best practice? And this is where we talk about changing the mindset. There's a massive shift, change management, but also mindset shift across teams, where they move away from just looking at things reactively, oh, it's happened, but to proactively seeing it in advance, anticipating what's going to happen, and actually going and changing that course. So it's more like, we talk a lot about predictive analytics, which are important, but it's more about prescriptive analytics. So what are you going to prescribe to me in relation to that best practice that will allow me to change the course and look at those leading indicators? And that is what GMs and the head of each department requires in order for them to be able to plan their resources to the best possible way and create this profit management environment where a revenue manager sets the scene, they accurately agree to what the forecast is going to be, and then the heads of departments, from an operational standpoint, they put into action. They plan the relevant resources, and that's where we're going to start seeing that we're starting to shrink those costs. Because we have visibility over them, we're able to control them, we're able to contain them, we are able to drive our margin, and we need to start driving profit from our revenue, not just top line. We need to look at the bottom line, because that will future-proof us, will make us a lot more sustainable. And of course, human and labor, the human resources are critical because they're 50% of our P&L or more. But there's other material resources that we need to have in view when we talk about managing managing those resources. And these are material resources, from energy to water to gas to residues and waste. Everything, we need to have it under one single within one single platform that is connected, and that allows us to determine the next steps we need to take every single day of our operation.
So Patrick, taking this into account, do you feel that you have changed in some way your KPIs since starting working with PMI, in terms not just of resources, of course, but also with your team? Do you use different KPIs now?
Yeah, yes, we do. Yes, we do, absolutely. And I think there is an important factor also to relate before starting the tool like that and looking for the internal benchmark as well. So first of all, every company will have, in most sense, it would be probably a rare exception, a best practice in the company. So that has been our exercise to begin with. We started with looking at our hotels or lease portfolio. We found the ones that in the traditional KPI environment were showing us the right organizational structure to start with and the right leadership on the ground. And once we had done that, we categorized the operations of our hotels in four different categories. On looking at that, of course, every category had different nuances. For example, a medium hotel with big M&E may have an M&E component that is important both for the total RevPOLU or for the overall productivity of the property. And so that's where we started to say, okay, we might have different KPI set coming from PMI adapted to the different size and organization of our operating model, property per property, based on that. And of course, then that becomes also a great enabler to actually bring the change management to other hotels. Because first of all, you're presenting your organization with the fact that these practices are not reinventing the hot water; they're present in many organizations. But second, that you need a booster, if you allow me, like PMI with d2o, to actually allow you to steer and monitor and modify these KPIs, these fundamental KPIs, towards the end objective that is always profitability and then EBITDA. At the end of the day, that's we're not a charity organization, so we always try to increase our profitability. That's it. So absolutely yes, KPIs have been. We are in continuous work with the d2o team, because sometimes we also drive them crazy with new ideas of new KPIs, because then of course when you start to open to a bigger audience, so now we have over 150 hotels with PMI, with different geographies, different backgrounds, international crowd. You can imagine how creative this can be. And that's where then we go to the governance, because I think it's important that also the governance in an organization is actually setting the right standards. Last thing before I pass the word one again is the external benchmarking. You spoke, Cristina, before of Hotstats. We're partners of them already since 2019, and they were seriously the first company that would allow us to look at external benchmark in the cost lines, because even with other players, you could see a lot of benchmarking towards the top line, towards other KPIs, but not towards all the rest, which is probably what is the most important to convert then your profitability. And that has been then the alternation. So we do a lot of internal benchmarking based on the category of the hotel and the brand, but we also do a lot of external benchmark, looking at certain destination, thanks to all stats and d2o, and put them together and say, okay, guys, this is what we do. This is what others do.
Okay. So, Chris, last time we talked about how this could be a big thing, not just for big hotels with a big structure, because it may seem like you really need a big structure to take full advantage of what we're talking about. But is it possible that maybe smaller hotels with smaller teams may also have good results with this kind of structure?
I think at the end of the day, every single hotel needs to become profitable. So I think the answer is there. Every hotel will be able to benefit from such a process and ultimately connecting the data, because the biggest challenge that we have across the board is connecting that data, and it's very difficult to create and drive high performance teams if they don't have the data. I mean, they can be the most talented people on earth, and we could go in through the amount of turnover we see in hotels is incredible, because those individuals, it's they're not responsible for failing, perhaps because they don't have enough data, and perhaps the company doesn't have enough resources. It's not that they don't have them, they just don't allocate them correctly. And the challenge is they don't have visibility. So data becomes the cornerstone to be able to connect and correlate what goes on across the board, how costs are being influenced by revenue and our consumptions and our sustainability and everything else, because ultimately once we're able to connect all of these together, it's so much easier. So any hotel, whether it's 50 bedroom, whether it's 100 bedroom plus, they really need to be able to work with either possibly 2 departments. They might just have housekeeping as the biggest department. They might have the restaurant or the breakfast or whatnot. But each one of those needs to be allocated correctly, because it's not the same when I'm allocating my resources when I'm at 80% full and when I'm at 40% full. If I just allocate my staff, which again, my biggest cost, I allocate them based on my staff's agenda and personal agenda, when they need to be off, when we all understand, and of course we adapt as best as possible, but it's identifying how many resources do I really need at any point in time. And if that 80% of my occupancy, 70%, they go out to a festival or an event, that means I don't need 4 people in the bar. I need possibly 1 person in the bar. So avoiding as much of the wastage that I could, that will impact how profitable my business can grow. And so it applies to any hotel. And I think we really wanted to showcase the incredible story of Radisson, because they've taken a monumental effort to understand how can they really be more lean in a way that is profitable, and that they can simplify, the organizational structure and the tasks of each individual in a way that can impact positively the bottom line. I think Patrick, when you might be in a better position to talk about this, how you have seen gradually the impact and how long it took you. I believe initially it was like initial 8 months that you had the biggest effort in a 50 plus properties. Was that how you initially ran it?
Yes, that's how we started exactly. We started with a couple of properties in a month pilot. I need to say that after the first month, they were clear the results, so there was not even a mention. One of the first stunning and simple eye opener for many of the GMs was actually starting to see their rotas in a more or let's say organic and above property or helicopter view. So they were actually starting to understand that most of their schedules were pure patterns. Team members that were working on the same day, on the same hours, no matter if I had 1 cover or if I had 150 cover. And so that has been an eye opener already after the first month, to go then to other GMs and other properties to say, guys, this is the proof already. Month on month after the first month, there is an improvement both in hours, payroll, and of course increase in RevPol. But at the same time, you start to open your eyes, as you said, Cristina, to put the resources in the right moment. And that's why I always say about with Young, I insist on the fact the CEO of d2o, he talks about productivity and said, we need to really speak about profitability. Why? Because there is also a qualitative component, meaning that if I have a peak of occupancy in one day and I'm 100%, and I'm not staffing in the right way to serve a guest that is paying 300 euros for a room, I'm sorry, I'm missing a quality opportunity. And we all know that from my quality scores, from a GRI perspective, so the Global Review Index is actually going down, I'm probably going to lose also in my RevPAR. And I'm probably going to be obliged to lower my rate. So it's all a concatenation of events that brought us there. And one that just to also let's say interfere a little bit with Christina's answer, it doesn't matter the size. Believe me, we question ourselves many times. Does it make sense in a 30-room hotel? Does it make sense in our Cour de Lodge, 56 rooms in Lyon? Does it make sense to have it in Madrid at the Radisson Blu? Yes, yes, yes. Our answer is no matter how the size is. And actually, for example, here in Madrid, we went even to the next step. Here, we're really starting to work with a full cluster or pool team, that I can tell you every week where you're going to work between the hotels. So you have a team, and you can definitely, team can work one day at the Red because they have the peak for a big event like we will have for Feet or probably on the 25th. But then they can work at the Blue if there is a special event for the Blue that needs for. So we need to also highlight this amazing power that d2o can have to actually give us the understanding of where we need to place resources in a multi-property environment on the same destination.
And just a quick note, Patrick. So I know you've mentioned a few examples of this, but can you tell us about any specific department or process that you had a big surprise with the results in increasing productivity?
Well, I think it's one of our biggest fights still today is F&B. Okay, we say rooms is easy, and it's true in some way. Room is quite predictable, also thanks to all the revenue tools that we have. But F&B is another ballgame. Why? Because I might have a certain prediction of capture ratio, but that day it's raining outside, so how I'm gonna get an overflow of guests that I was not expecting, and I need to react in a couple minutes, an hour. So that's where the prediction of PMI makes a difference, and it's one, in my opinion, of their biggest USPs is the food and beverage accuracy. Also, probably coming from the cruise background, and you know that cruise is a multi-outlet operations where you really need to dispatch resources from the 7th floor to the 5th floor restaurant to the deck and so on. So you understand how in same day those mass of people on a cruise line can choose which restaurant they need to go, and you need to be staffed and ready to handle them. And that's where D2O gets the real difference. So F&B, and in particular in the F&B, kitchen hours, because those in the kitchen hour you really start to look at the hidden cost.
Okay. Sense. Great. So I would like to have like a final conclusion from you both, but in the sense that now that we're talking so much about AI and technology, and of course this includes in some sense things related to big data and everything. So not just to have your opinion on how the human is going to be important in this context, but also in which sense does this take a different mindset? Not just technology. In which sense we need to have a new mindset in our, not just in our GMs maybe, but across the whole teams. How do you feel that we need a different approach to how we deal with talent and different kinds of people around the organization? First, Chris, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think again it goes down to once you have enough visibility of what's going on in your organization and across each and every department, you'll be able to really start driving, a visibility on individuals and make them shine, because it creates this trust within the organization, within the department, that you no longer have to ask questions or feel worried about asking questions, because you have data. So you can plan your own department to the best possible outcome that you can or that you need, because you have your data in front of you. And you know exactly what I need to tackle now, whether it's kitchen, whether it's housekeeping, whether it's food, who is driving, who's lagging behind, and how can I support them? So it builds that trust between the head of department and the GM. So for them to really collaborate, the GM doesn't have to inquire anymore. What is going on here? Why is this happening? He has the data. He already knows the answer. He just goes there to support that head of department or that employee to help them bring that performance back up. And I think it's a collaboration. It's like moving away from, I need to worry about this end of month report and that deadline that I need to deliver, to more of a, I have the data, I see the future, I can preempt the best next action that I can do, and I can work on it, and I can drive that confidence that what I do is right, because you can see how you're benchmarked and are you adopting the best practice constantly. So I think it really nourishes that pool of talent, and it helps them expand and develop as individuals within their organization, but also as people working with people, because they drive more confidence and collaboration.
Okay, awesome. Patrick, up to you. We are a service industry. So humans are there, they need to stay, and they will always stay. I will always have the want and watch, even if I'm a technological lover, of having people there. I think the mindset that we need to change, one that Cristina, I think you mentioned as well, is the fact that if before the skill had to be an Excel skill to prepare a report, now the skill needs to be how to read a report. And then is moving the GM from a GM that is actually being probably too strategic in an office to a GM that is hands-on and thinking of his guest, because then the systems, the artificial intelligence will at least give him the direction that he should take. So people first is moving the people to do what they do. Somebody told me when I joined the hotel school the first time, Nobody has never joined a hotel school to watch at the screen. You're joining a hotel school because you have this will and love to serve. And that's where systems like that are actually easing my life. I always say I met d2o, and as a lazy Italian, it just saved me a day and a half per week to look at my rotas, to look at my forecast, to look at everything, green clothes, instead of actually talking with the guests where I could enjoy my time, being empathic. So absolutely, that's that will stay.
That's a wonderful idea to end this conversation. Again, thank you both for taking the time to be with us. The dogs have behaved, which is a sentence I thought I never used in an interview. And again, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to be together again at Fitur just in a couple of weeks. So I hope we can all meet there. And if you have the chance to say hi to Patrick or Cristina there, just take advantage of their big knowledge, and I'm sure they will be happy to help and speak more about productivity and revenue management. Thank you both, Patrick, Cristina.
Thank you very much, Juanda and Patrick. Great conversation. And we'll see Patrick also at the HSMAI ROC Revenue Optimization Conference next week in London. So looking forward to that.
Definitely. Thank you both. Happy New Year to everyone, and see you in Fitur in London.
See you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfecto.